I would like to call to order this April 24th, 2024 meeting of the North Allegheny School Board. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we go to our calendar review, first I wanted to note that Mrs. Blackburn is on virtually. Mrs. Blackburn, can you hear us?
Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Ooh, I said, yes, I can. It says the host muted my microphone. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you faintly. I think we're working on making your volume a little bit louder. Can you say something again, please?
Hi, thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Moving on to our calendar review. We met in executive session before this meeting this evening to discuss a personnel matter. We have our math curriculum review this evening, and our next meetings on May 15th, we will have a world language curriculum review, and on May 22nd, our regular meeting, we will have our 25-year recognition, our NAF scholarship recipient recognition, and our diversity contest recognition. The next item on our agenda is our math curriculum review. Dr. Hyland.
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. Well, we are excited tonight to have folks from the math department come up and present to the board the review process that they went through. We're excited to hear what you have to say. I know the board's excited. I've had the opportunity to review the report and the presentation, and really looking forward to what you have to share with the board. So at this time, I will turn it over to Mr. Smith, who will lead our team.
Thank you, Dr. Hyland. We are honored to be with you this evening as we embark on enhancing the educational experience for all students within our district. Throughout our math curriculum review process, our goal was clear: to formulate a series of informed and actionable recommendations for program development. These recommendations were crafted with specific attention to offering a dynamic curriculum and quality professional development that stimulates teaching and learning. We understand that it is our collective responsibility to continuously evaluate and refine our practices to meet the evolving needs of our student body. And before introducing our speakers this evening, I would like just to highlight some of the steps that we have taken to come up with our recommendations. First, in the beginning, we started with a SWOT analysis, and SWOT is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. The team used this information gathered from the SWOT analysis to begin identifying common themes that emerged. These themes included curriculum, instruction, assessment, professional development, resources, and technology. And you would see those in the report. I wanted to highlight from those themes, we developed subcommittees to really go in depth about each of those program buckets. Two of the subcommittees, though, I'd like to highlight. We called one Exemplar A. An Exemplar A committee took the time to really identify top-tiered schools that were identified in the Pittsburgh Business Times across the state. We wanted to find the top school districts achieving in math and then find out what they were doing. So we set up interviews with those districts, and there were 9 of them. We met virtually and went through a series of questions. Exemplar B committee really focused in on the interventions and enrichment opportunities, because we know we want to reach all students. And looking at assessment data, we really want to make sure that we're identifying students that maybe need additional intervention or enrichment opportunities. So we wanted to find out from schools what they're doing and what that looks like. We were also in collaboration with the Pennsylvania Department of Education, the lead math consultant, to find out what's happening across the state and does it look different from what we see at North Allegheny. And we also were in collaboration with a math coach from the Allegheny Intermediate Unit. So we really took the time to collaborate with others and identify what's working across the state to help us create a clear guide for moving forward. You will notice several of our team members speaking tonight. We felt that it was also important to have a voice representing all levels to highlight the steps that we will be taking when we implement these recommendations. And we will start our presentation this evening by looking at some of the math program considerations were developed through our SWOT analysis. Stephanie Conrad will be our first speaker. Stephanie is a fourth grade teacher from McKnight Elementary, and she'll start the presentation off.
Thank you and good evening. I'm happy to be here to talk about a review of the math program considerations. First, a consideration, a deeper understanding of grade level standards and eligible content. We'd like to expand opportunities for staff to participate in professional learning discussions around mathematical instruction, a consistent weekly spiral review resource, and a development of common assessments by grade level. We'd like to expand current win time structure to include math intervention and enrichment, and vertical planning between grade levels for consistency in academic language, mathematical practices, and content. Thank you.
Thank you for having me back. It seems like it was just April when we were doing the first presentation. Now here we are again, a year later. I'm going to talk about the middle school considerations at the beginning of the curriculum review. One of them had to do with analyzing and continue to analyze our common assessments that we have for 6 through 12. We also have those for K through 5. And when we analyze the common assessments, what we're able to do is see if there are any gaps in the students' learning. Sometimes it's in the way that we ask the question, and then we analyze that to see if the question needs to be changed. Sometimes we need to spend more time on a particular topic if we find that a bunch of students missed the same type of question. And if that's the case, then we redevise our pacing guide for that course. So that's the first consideration we had. The second had to do with taking a look at Keystone and PSSA data and driving our instruction through that. The third had to do with taking a look at the best practices that are out there, inquiry-based learning, project-based learning, and problem-based learning. We also want to take a look at, during the review, at limiting the pure computation on homework. In other words, are we only giving the kids homework on computation problems only? Or are we making them think through the homework through word problems and literacy? Those are the considerations at the middle school level. The high school ones are very, very similar. We have to analyze the common assessments, as we always do, for 9 through 12. We also want to take an emphasis on the Keystone for 9th grade Algebra 1 students, the SAT and ACT through multiple choice questions and open-ended questions. Best practices still for 6 through 12 or 9 through 12 would be inquiry-based learning, problem-based learning, and project-based learning. We also thought it was a good idea, and you're going to hear this at the end of the presentation, you're going to get to see the pathways. But we took a look at creating computer science pathways, which mirror our math pathways. And the very last slide that we have today, I'll explain what those look like. We also want to take a look at adopting new resources for not just 9 through 12, 6 through 12, and K through 5, mainly because our site licenses are expiring over the next couple of years. And last, we want to take a look at the math pathways. For the M2 pathway, we were not in compliance with NCAA regulations. So you'll see whenever Gary, at the end of the presentation, talks about our new pathways for math, the reason they were redevised for M2 was that we were hitting all the NCAA requirements that we needed. We also wanted to take a look at 8th grade PSSA scores and make some adaptations there for the M2 pathway. Those are the considerations for high school. Now we're going to take a look into our recommendations. Recommendation number 1 is our new philosophy. I'm not going to bore you and have you go through and read this because it's in the report, but there are 3 words that Steve was able to highlight: explore, understand, and apply. I just want to talk real quickly about those 3. Inquiry-based learning is a big part of learning mathematics. The days of a teacher standing up in front of the class and doing direct instruction for 45 minutes every single day is a thing of the past. So when you see the word explore up there, what we're really talking about is inquiry-based learning. The second word that you'll see up there is to understand. Are they able to make a connection to previous courses? I'm going to talk real quickly later about spiral learning. I'm not going to give you a dissertation about it. We're going to just mention it in a couple minutes here. So can the students take what they learned in Algebra 1 and apply it to Algebra 2? Can they connect it to real world activities? If they're able to do that, they get a deeper understanding of the material. So when they get to pre-calculus and calculus, they're prepared. The last word up there you'll see is apply. And again, that's applying to application problems or project-based learning, which is a little different than problem-based learning. I'll be back in a couple minutes.
So our second recommendation was with the curriculum, and curriculum has a couple parts. I'm going to get us started here. We wanted to make sure our curriculum was aligned with state standards, and our curriculum framework was aligned with the state standards. So we started developing our curriculum, starting with the standards as we always do, and then assuring all our essential concepts and skills are covered at each grade level. So we worked on our grade level, but then at every grade level, we also looked at what came before and what comes after. So we make sure we know what the students have already learned, so we're not spending too much time on something that was a skill from the previous grade. And then also looking at, are they going to see this again next year? So do we need to have mastery at this grade, or will they see it again next year? So we'll see a little bit more of a detailed view of the framework we developed on our next slide. Also, we wanted to look at the communication plan for our summer tune-up materials. We've had that for many years, but we found through this review that a lot of families didn't know they were there. We switched to having it online, and communications went out, but not every family was accessing them. So we want to really look at how can we make sure not only are these tune-up materials there, but does everyone know where they are? Do they know how to get to them, and are people accessing them? So we don't have that slide that we oftentimes see over the summer. And then looking at the mathematical language and common vocabulary. So we make sure we're all using the same language year to year. So we don't have the same concept taught at one grade and then the next grade, but it's a different word. So kids are confused, and sometimes we see that they think it's a totally new skill, but it is the same skill. It's just a different word that's used. So we want that common language. And we wrote that into our curriculum framework too. We wrote the vocabulary that should be used so teachers can look and see what is the vocabulary that should be used. And that same vocabulary is going to be what's used on PSSAs too. So what's going to be on our assessments, what's going to be used grade to grade. So we're having that consistency also. So we're seeing consistency come up a lot. That's what we want to have grade to grade. So we can look at so this is a snapshot of just the second grade framework we worked on. So we started with the standards, and then we had our learning goals from there. And then we looked at what resources can help us support our learning goals and our standards. We did this for every grade, and then we went in to each unit and went even more specifically. And that's where we wrote what vocabulary we wrote. Is this the only grade that you're going to have this specific learning goal, or do they have it in the previous grade or the next grade? But we had everything in one place here, so teachers know where to look and know when are we teaching what standard, what resources can we use, what are the goals. Everything is in one place. This is just one snapshot, but we have this for every grade, and it is going to be something that's a work in progress too. So as we get more resources, right now we just see the Go Math lessons there. That's what we have right now. But as we get more, learn more about Waggle, an additional resource, we'll put that on there. And as we develop more resources, we'll put that on there too. As we have our common assessments, we'll have this in here too. So it's a place where everyone can go and know where they can access every part of their curriculum.
Still under recommendation number 2, curriculum. I mentioned earlier about the M2 pathway and the fact that we are now NCA compliant. Gary and I were able to write a new curriculum with assessments that we submitted to the NCA. You'll see that in our pathway chart here towards the end of the presentation. Implementation of AP and honors classes. AP pre-calculus with trigonometry will be implemented next year. The book company is allowing us to pilot for 1 year, so we don't have to purchase for the year after, which is nice. We'll also have honors database programming next year, which is a SQL language in computer science. I'll talk about that at the end. And we changed probability and statistics to honors probability and statistics also. You'll see all this on the pathway chart at the end. This is where I want to talk real quickly about spiral learning. So this can be very brief. So with spiral learning, it's a vital part of our curriculum review. What we've been doing at NASH for many years, and now it's going down to NAI, the middle schools and elementary, is giving the kids warm-up questions at the beginning beginning of each lesson based upon material that they're supposed to know before they got into that class. So if you think about all the concepts that a student learns in Algebra 6, are they going to be able to remember all of those concepts when they're in honors pre-calculus? More than likely not. So the spiral review going all the way down to kindergarten is what we're going to be using moving forward for students to be retaught the material that they might have forgotten. COVID or not COVID, I said this in April, we should have been doing this all along, and now we are going to be doing it all along. So that's the idea of spiral learning. The other idea is monitor and adjust for vertical and horizontal alignment. That's the last part. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sarah Groves. I'm a fifth grade teacher at Marshall Elementary, and going to talk a little. Oh, someone else. Yep. Thanks.
Sorry.
All right, no problem. So talking a little bit about instruction, especially at the elementary level, but really kind of K to 12. We want to develop students' problem solving and reasoning skills. There are 8 standards for mathematical practice, and they're very wordy, but I kind of broke down a few of them just to kind of get an idea. So they focus on making a sense of problems, really working on persevering through to try to get to solutions, understanding the relationships between real world problem scenarios and the mathematical representations that demonstrate those. Students getting actively engaged in actual mathematical conversation, or at elementary level, what we call math talk. And being able to identify and evaluate efficient strategies for a solution, which does tie in with that conversation, being able to analyze someone else's ideas and say, I agree, or I don't agree, and in a respectful way. And then that really ties in with that math-specific communication skills, which Christina also touched on, with making sure that students are even using appropriate vocabulary instead of saying, I plus 2 plus 2. Trying to get them to use the correct vocabulary there. The next is to kind of take a look at reviewing and refining Reflex Math, which is our current program that we use for math fact fluency. It starts with addition and subtraction, rolls into multiplication and division. But I know even at the 5th grade level, there's still some work there to be done, and we also know that the owners of Reflex Math also have what's called Frax Math, which incorporates fractions, which are big concepts moving into especially middle school. We want to continue to incorporate hands-on manipulatives and real-world examples into our math instruction, which ties in with those mathematical standards of practice, to make those more abstract concepts more concrete and accessible to all learners. And then Go Math Waggle. This is the new shiny star that's coming with our new Go Math. I actually was a bit of a nerd and jumped right in. I actually found there was tech access before we all knew there was tech access. And so I have actually been using it with my students for the last 6 weeks to positive reviews from 10 and 11-year-olds. And but the idea is that Waggle provides adaptive, personalized practice and instruction that builds foundations and accelerates skill growth. So in some respects, a lot of the kids even noted that it's very similar to how we use ExactPath right now, where it's adaptive and there's an assessment and it places them on a level. I've been using it a little bit more in the sense that I've been assigning topics as we're leading up to the wonderful PSSA that will be next week. And so there are components where teachers can assign lessons, they can assign practice, and they can assign adaptive quizzes. And the lessons are what the kids are saying are like, yeah, those are fine. But we want to make sure that we can explore a consistent format to kind of incorporate that K through 5, working its way through and making sure it's actually a part of our regular instruction.
Good evening, everybody. It's great to see you. I was just listening to her speak and realizing how thankful I am. We have such amazing elementary school teachers who send us amazing kids at the middle level. So thank you, guys. That was amazing. I wanted to share with you how thoughtful this team was, and even so much so in the language that they used. And that first word on my slide is evaluate. And we use that word intentionally because we really want to delve into and dive into our processes as it relates to intervention and enrichment for our students. And we want to find, is there something more that we can be doing? And so we want to look at our current processes, but we also want to look what are our districts locally doing, and what are our districts in the state doing, but even more so nationally. And so we're going to spend time as a team, as a committee, evaluating those processes to see, can we come up with a better solution for our kids as it relates to intervention and enrichment? And the important aspect to this is we want to do it using our current staffing model. We don't always think that just adding more people is the answer. We think that we can think creatively. This is a very intelligent group under great leadership. So this is an exciting aspect for us because we know that when we're able to accomplish this, it's going to be better for our students. That second bullet really revolves around the enrichment and extension piece. We want to ensure that if our kids are mastering that content and doing so at a pretty fast rate, that we're going to continue to push them, and not just with additional work, but with work that will allow them to stretch and go deeper. And the last one is exciting for me as a building principal, and hopefully also for our math teachers. We want to create these look-fors, and what look-fors will be utilized for is when we go into those classrooms, there's going to be a common language between the administration and the teachers, so that when we do have those opportunities to talk after we've had the chance to go in and see that amazing instruction, we're talking using the same language, and we're all efforting towards the same goal. And so these three aspects of our recommendations for instruction, we do believe are going to be valuable for our kids going forward. Turn it over to Dr. Thorpe.
All right, good evening, everyone. I will apologize in advance for the glare on my head, as pointed out by Mr. Bell. It is a day 2 of PSSAs, and you know those days are really busy with running around, so I apologize. I have the pleasure of presenting recommendation number 4, assessment. So as you can see on the slide, and I'm sure you read in the report, we're talking about researching some of the benchmark and diagnostic assessments. Because currently ExactPath is going to expire. For elementary, for example, ExactPath begins in 2nd grade. And prior to that, we used the ITBS, or Iowa Test of Basic Skills. Well, now with ExactPath expiring, we are looking at some other options that the district may be able to use as a resource. So we've already formed a team of individuals that included building administrators, facilitators, school psychologists, central office administrators, to come together to take a look at some presentations to help inform our decision-making, which would be shared with the board really soon, but we also want to make sure that we are making some decisions that are fiscally responsible for everyone. And the resource that we will use does assist us in making some decision-making when it comes to not only ELA, but mathematics. For example, right now, we are working on our mathematics acceleration process. And so some of the data that we do collect from ExactPath is what we use to identify the students that will go through that screening process. And so again, we are looking at some of the other resources out there that may be better for us to use. All right, for the next part of the assessment recommendation. So for those of you who may not be familiar with MTSS, in elementary, it does really focus a lot on ELA. I believe Dr. Swatter talked a little bit about this and what they're trying to do at the middle school level, but we do have this process in place when we talk about Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. Tier 1 being in the general classroom for all students, but when we have some students who may need some additional supports or services, not special education, but something that's offered to everyone, they end up getting pulled for some interventions for Tier 2, working with a reading specialist or an MTSS interventionist. But again, a lot of that is focusing on reading. We don't really have that process in place for mathematics. So that is something that we are going to explore and take a look at for all of our students. And then that third bullet down there, just continuing to use those formative assessments what teachers are using on a daily basis. For example, at the closure of a lesson, issuing an exit ticket just to gain what the students have learned from the lesson, really helping the teachers to drive that instruction for the next day and making some of those decisions. And so we do already have that information on at our fingertips, but when it comes to taking a look at other assessments, we are still in the process of taking a look at. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm very excited to be here as I think I'm the newest member of the math department team, and it's taken me only 9 years to get here. I love all the departments, but having a math background, I feel like I'm back home with my people. So thank you for all the work you've done, because I also know that I'm coming in after so many hours, brain power, and really some research has gone into this report. So thank you to the team. As we continue to talk about assessments, our assessments are only as good as the data that we get from them and then how we use that data to drive instruction. So every year as we get to the scheduling season, our course recommendation and acceleration process is a big topic. It's important that we're constantly reviewing the criteria that we use to make sure that our students are in the right courses, right student. And that goes back to our work in the program of studies as a 6 through 12, K to 12 really team. And as our students are going through the acceleration process, it's important to remind families the why behind it, as well as what they're going to encounter, their pathway as they move along our North Allegheny curriculum, and also that all those courses that they may take prior to high school will not be counting towards their QPA or their graduation requirements and credits. So that process is an ongoing educational piece for our community. And in addition, helping our teachers really focus on using that data and how to use that data and giving them time to use that data. So as a building administrative team and working with the department, being very deliberate and creating a schedule to make sure that our teachers are meeting on a regular basis, vertically, horizontally, team-wise, grade level, and cross-disciplinary. So we're looking forward to really taking that data to the next level. And with that data then, what do we do with it to help our teachers develop and grow as they are going through this review and with new resources to implement our math department philosophy and program. And so identifying those in-service calendar opportunities to make sure that our teachers are getting what they need and how they need it, just like we do for our students, is extremely important. And making sure that as we are learning about our new materials and resources, we lean on each other and our amazing teachers and professionals, learning about Waggle from the people that have been using it for weeks, and really getting in there with the big ideas learning, and making sure that we're not only just focusing on those classroom teachers, but also the paraprofessionals that support our students and our special education department. So I'm looking forward to using that data with the whole team, the whole district, to make sure that we're driving instruction to develop our teachers and our students.
Thanks, Kate. As part of the recommendation for professional development, we are so fortunate here. We have a lot of resources at our disposal, and we do have something called On Hands, which is a house for all of our student data. And so we want to ensure that our admin and our teachers know where this data is, know how to analyze this data, and then use that data to make decisions going forward. So that's part of one of our recommendations for professional development. Also, we want to create professional learning communities. And in our world, we call those PLCs. And really that is just to honestly give math teachers and math staff the opportunity and the space to just keep the conversation going, to talk and bounce ideas off one another, and to bring things to the table that are working for them. And then, from that, maybe something is born as far as a new strategy or a new best practice. And so we want to allow that opportunity for our staff. And then, we talked a little bit about the universal screener. I know Dr. Thornton had shared that. And simply put, we just want to make sure that when we go through this process, we do it the right way and we do it with fidelity. And so that's extremely important for us as far as professional development. And the last one is this idea of formative assessments. And Bobby, Dr. Bell, no way. Mr. Bell, clarify that for the board notes. Mr. Bell talked
Sure that's not in the report.
Mr. Bell had talked about our summative or our big end of unit tests. But really what we want to also look at are those formative assessment opportunities. These are those times where teachers are giving these small check-ins so that they know where students are as it relates to the skills and knowledge that they should have gained through those lessons. And so that when we get to that summative assessment or that big end of chapter test, that they know that they are ready. And so we really want to dive in and make sure that our formative assessment techniques are where they need to be. I have the next slide. We'll just continue on. We have some resource adoption we had talked about. Essentially, we want to make sure that when we bring on these resources, we're using them. And we're using them with fidelity, and we're evaluating their use and their effectiveness for our kids. And you can see that that's a five-year phased approach. The other is, I keep hearing a little bit about Waggle, this enhanced technology and these learning platforms. Not real familiar with Waggle, but it sounds like our elementary staff are. And so we'll continue to learn this software so that we can help implement it with our students. And then the last two go together, It is to identify and explore intervention and enrichment resources, and then find a place for that to live so that all of our teachers and staff have access to that, and so that we're sharing across all of our schools. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Gary Grader. I'm the co-department chair with Bob, and I'm one of the teachers at the senior high school. So I'm going to talk about the revisions to the math pathway chart. Specifically, we are looking at the bottom row, the M2 pathway, and it starts off at the Math 8. The courses used to be called Essentials of Algebra 1 Part 1 and Essentials of Algebra 1 Part 2 that were taught in 8th and 9th grade. We've made a change to where we're teaching a Math 8 class now that's more PSSA, Math 8 focused for the 8th grade PSSA. And the Algebra 1 course will now be taught all in 9th grade so that we have the Algebra 1 focus for the Keystone specifically in 9th grade for those students. In addition to that, you'll notice the Essentials Geometry course, the Essentials of Algebra 2 Part 1 course, and the Essentials of Algebra 2 Part 2 course all have new names. The Essentials word has effectively been removed. And we have Geometry, we have Algebra 2 and Topics, and we have College Algebra. As far as the curriculum is concerned, there's not a big change to the curriculum for those students. The biggest thing was the NCAA approval. They did not like the word essentials in our labels for our classes. So we made sure that when we presented the new curriculum, we also made sure that that change was made for the title of the course. And thus, all of the courses that you see on that pathway are all NCAA approved 9 through 12, starting with the Algebra 1 course. So that takes care of the M2 pathway. We also had a change up top where we are introducing the AP Pre-Calculus with Trigonometry course. That will be taught both at NAI and at NASH. That course was first introduced this school year nationally that it could be taught. So we waited just 1 year for the math curriculum review so that we could implement it after we went through review. So as Mr. Bell said, we'll be implementing that starting next year, and we're able to pilot the book. So it did not require anything to purchase the start of that particular course. The final change to the math pathway chart was the probability and statistics course. That is changed to an honors probability and statistics course. Our AP teacher and our Province Stats teacher for statistics are kind of working together on that to beef up that probability and stats course to an honors level course. That makes all of our college and high school courses taught in the math department at least an honors level. It was the only course that was not an honors level course. That was a college and high school course through the Roche. So now all of our courses taught college and high school are at least at an honors level. So Bobby will finish us up with the computer pathway chart.
I mentioned the computer pathway chart at the beginning of my presentation. You can see that it sort of mirrors what we're doing with math. Now, I do have to make sure that everyone understands that the math pathway charts are kind of etched in stone. These are suggestions. The student does not necessarily have to follow these exact pathways, but what I think it does, I think it gives clarification for our administration, upper administration and administration in the buildings. It also helps various departments. Sometimes what happens is the students come in and they're taking computer science A, just making that up. And then they sit down with their guidance counselor, and the guidance counselor calls me and says, well, Bobby, what should they do next? Well, there's a lot of things they could do next. We're hoping that this clears up for the guidance counselors also. It also hopefully will help our community, for our parents and our children, so they can see if they start in this class in 9th grade for computer science, they could end up here at the end. And up until this point, we didn't have it written down. They maybe could have tried to figure it out through the program of studies, but it wasn't a visual. We should not need, now this is as of right now, we should not need to add staff at NAI next year because we are adding 2 honors courses for computer science that you can see up there for 9th grade. That's what we're anticipating right now. We don't know how many kids are going to sign up for these courses. So we're going to have to see. As of right now, we don't think we will. The other major idea of the changes that we made is if a student chose to, they would be able to have all 4 computer science languages before they graduated. So that's the major perk of what we did here. Before we go into questions and comments, I just want to take a second, if you guys don't mind, and just thank some people. Because this last 2 years has been, I don't want to say it was terrible, but it was very, very tedious. We had a lot of change in upper administration in this building. And whenever Brendan came back, Dave, Michelle, I just want everyone to know, they hit the road running. The first day that Brendan was here, he called me over and I came into his office and he's like, okay, Bobby, here's where we are. This is what's going on. Tell me what's happening and let's move forward. Let's get moving with this. It wasn't 2 days that he was in the district. I was in his office. So I want to thank the 3 of them for the professionalism that's happened through that. That's not easy. You know, we had 1 year where we had upper admin that might have known they were leaving. I'm not sure that they were concerned about the math review at that time, you know, as much as they were staying. So I want to thank them first and foremost. Steve coming in from Pine Richland, he was doing the elementary, and then his job got changed to being K-12. I cannot tell you how great this man has been. He has been tremendous in his job. I said to Senate the other day that he brings a calming effect to a curriculum review. And curriculum reviews for department chairs are very, very nerve-wracking. One time, I'll tell you one quick story. I won't make it long, I promise. 3 o'clock in the morning, I wake up and sit up straight up in bed. I called Gary at 6 o'clock in the morning, right? Because I thought I forgot to order Algebra 1 books for NAI for 9th grade. Because we would have to order an extra 40 to 50 books. And I'm like, oh my God, I only did middle school. I forgot about NAI. Now it turned out I didn't forget. But 3 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday, I'm sitting straight up in bed. My wife's like, what is the matter? I'm like, I have to go downstairs right now. So Steve has come in, taken the research that we had done last year and just completely ran with it and brought the whole entire program together from K through 12. So thank you, Steve, for everything you did for us. It's my humble opinion on this, but I do believe I'm right. I have the best administrative team from principals of any department chair in the whole entire district. Mark and I talk on a regular basis, usually because someone's trying to advance into pre-calculus or ABC calculus as a 4th grader or something. But Mark and I talk on a regular basis. Dan came back on board, but Dan and I have been together now for, 15 years, and he decided to come back into math. Caitlin came on board. She was the principal at NAI, of course, so we spoke all the time then. But now that she's the principal in charge of 6 through 12, we talk all the time. I am telling you, these 3 people are fantastic. Being the math department chair with Gary for K through 12 for math in this district is challenging. If I didn't have a team of principals to support me, I don't know how I'd have done this for the last 20 years. I really don't. So thank you to the 3 of you. Last but not least, I want to thank 2 more people. Just give me 1 second here. I want to thank the department. If you remember, we came out of COVID. I think we had 1 year maybe of normal day-to-day schooling before we went into review. And the way we normally run a curriculum review at North Allegheny is we meet as a team of 35 to 40 teachers once a month for 2 years. We don't have subs anymore to be able to do that. So the task of running a curriculum review with upper admin leaving, at the same time, we didn't have as many caddy days to meet to do curriculum review activities. It was very, very tough. I mean, it was hard. But the department that we work for stepped up to the plate. If we needed something done for 6th grade in the middle of this review, I'm just using that as an example, we were able to pull together representatives from each one of the 3 middle schools and bring them together and get that task done. So the math department has really taken an initiative, even though we weren't able to meet as much as we normally do, to really make this curriculum review helpful and meaningful. I thought there were going to be a bunch of teachers here tonight. But my last group I wanted to thank were any administrators or teachers that weren't on this team that actually came to watch tonight to support the team. So thank you to everybody. This has been 2 years. It's been rough, but we are there. We are implementing and we are moving forward. We really believe that we're in a good spot. So thank you. Questions? Yes, I have.
Thank you, Mr. Bell.
Yes.
Does the board have any questions or comments on this report? Mr. Weniger.
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. In my day job, I'm an engineer, general contractor. So I was educated as an engineer. So I deal with math, unfortunately, all day, every day. And I guess, I deal with architects and engineers and electrical contractors, and everything we do is revolving around math. And I picked up the one thing that was on one of your slides was developing students' problem solving and reasoning skills. I cannot emphasize enough how important that one piece is in the real world. That is like, if I had to pinpoint a differentiator between someone that's okay and someone that's really good at whatever they do, it's that ability to figure out what the problem is and come up with a solution on their own to fix it. Like that is, when we hire people, that is exactly what I'm trying to figure out, is like, is this person have that skill? And you can't really figure it out in an interview, right? But you can make some educated guesses. And that is the person that will succeed, especially in our field. But I think it probably applies to medicine or law or anything, right? Is that person that can figure out what the problem is and how to solve it. Because that is very, very few and far between with people that are coming out of high school and college now. So I appreciate you picking that up. I cannot emphasize how important that one piece is. And then layer on top the communication part, right? That is, if you're really good at a technical skill, that's awesome. But if then you can communicate that, you're going to be an all-star in whatever you do. So I appreciate you guys picking up on that. And it's super, super encouraging for me to see that you guys are hammering that home. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weniger. Those were great comments, other than the part where you said, unfortunately, I have to work with math because we love math. I love math. I wish I had more opportunities.
I am a masochist, I'm going to say.
Mr. Gibbs, did you have a comment? Or Dr. Gibbs, my apologies.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, first I want to thank you for a stellar report. I was here for the report, not on the board, but I was in the audience and report a year ago, and I thought it was stellar then, and I think that it's stellar now. So I think you guys do a really great job. I have a bunch of questions, and they really stem from the fact that we did have an opportunity to look at the student achievement report back in December, I think it was. And so I'm trying to, in my mind, match up what we heard and learned from the student achievement report with what you're recommending that we do going forward with respect to math. Okay, and if I can, I don't want to be orating here, but if I can put it in the perspective that I understand it, that way you can correct me if I'm wrong, okay? But things were moving along swimmingly up until 2020, and then COVID came, and then things went south during COVID, particularly in math, if I understand correctly. And so now we're recovering from that. And when we look at the student achievement report, and I looked at it again today just to refresh my memory, things at the elementary level looked great, but when we got into middle school and beyond, things started to look a bit shaky. And so there was concern that we're not performing as well as the students transition from elementary to middle and so forth. And then in particular, there were the PVAS scores that I remember looked very bad. And I remember asking at the time, well, what does that mean? How do you interpret that? And I don't think we ever really got, because you hadn't had that data for very long. I don't think we ever really got a good explanation for what that means. Okay, so now, as you're describing your curriculum report, what you want to do going forward, I'm trying to think, okay, how is what you're proposing to do going to address the things that we were concerned about in the achievement report? And one of the things that I really still don't understand is, where are the students falling short? So if we say the students are performing as well as we'd like them to based on the data from the achievement report, where are they falling short? And if we know where they're falling short, how is what you're proposing now going to address where they're falling short? And then I'm almost done. And then if there are specific targets, like so the PSSA, for example, is a clear measurable, right? So if there are specific metrics that we're trying to achieve, so we want to move that number from A to B, from where it was before to where we want it to be 2 years from now, 3 years from now, forever, what are those targets and how long is it going to take to get there? So I didn't see any of that in your report. So maybe you could comment a little bit about
I
it.
can comment on some of that.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry about that.
What I can say is this, when I started as department chair in 2004, North Allegheny was just starting to be concerned about the PSSA, just starting. And then all of a sudden, we were really concerned about it by 2006 when the review was over. So what we had done at that time is we had the students start open-ended questions on the PSSA, which are scaffold questions, which are not multiple choice. That was our weak part at that time. So what we did is we implemented open-ended tasks that were scaffold into our curriculum. And all of a sudden, we were second in the state, first in the state, across the board. We did that all the way up to 2006, or 2016, excuse me. Once we got to COVID, though, people kind of took it upon themselves when the kids came out of COVID that we needed to teach students material that they missed during COVID. So something was going to have to give. Even though it might have still been in the pacing guide that everybody created and was aware of, maybe they didn't do those open-ended tasks as frequently as what they were doing before COVID. So when I talk today about incorporating multiple choice type PSSA questions and open-ended tasks back into our curriculum, even though it was already there, I think that's going to make a major change. When we did this in 2006, we had major changes. I believe our students are not that much different than 2006. So if we go back as a department and we're doing those again, and we're adding in the multiple choice questions, we didn't do that back in 2006. If we do both of those at the end of each unit, plus we're doing inquiry-based learning, problem-based learning, and project-based learning, there isn't anything else out there in educational jargon that our teachers would not be doing. So it's my job, or my task, it's not my job, it's my task to make sure that everybody is aware of what they're supposed to do and what they're all agreeing to. Remember, the pacing guide is made by every person in the department that teaches that class. So they're agreeing to it. Now, they then have to take it back to their classroom and make sure they implement it. And Dan had mentioned the look fors from the principals whenever they go through and do their observations. Everything that I'm speaking about is going to be in the look for them. So what does that target look like 4 or 5 years down the road? I don't know, because I don't believe as a department that we've been doing all of those things I just named on a consistent basis. I do believe if we start doing it sooner than later, that our scores are going to go back to just the way they were in 2006, 2007, when we did it then. That's the short answer
Got it.
for your long question.
Thank you. That was an excellent answer. I have one more question.
Sure.
I really appreciated how you incorporated the mission statement, talk about how we want all students to achieve their full potential, et cetera. So I'm wondering, do we ever survey grads who go on to college or wherever and ask them if they feel that they were well prepared for what they're being challenged to do with respect to math or anything that we teach as they move on, leaving NA and going to do the next thing? Do we do that?
It's a funny thing you asked that. That's why I smiled when you asked. Because I was at lunch the other day with Jen Rosado, who's our liaison at Nash for school counseling. And she got a phone call from Dave just the other day and asked that exact same question. So I don't believe that we do that on a consistent basis, but being that a lot in school counseling, I don't feel able to answer that question.
Okay.
I can tell you that I have a feeling it's going to be something that is happening on a regular basis.
Do you want to go ahead and take it?
No, good, because my phone call was, because his phone call.
Telephone tag. I'm just going to go right to you, Dr. Gibbs. As you know, we are starting to obtain feedback from our parents and from our students in those exit grade levels. One of the things that we are going to ask our seniors is to get contact information so that we can begin that process of contacting them when they are in their second or third year of college. We have to work out when we're going to do that. But that is fully our intention, to find out how we did, not only as they graduate, but once they got to college, were they prepared? That's something, or whatever endeavor they move into, if it's not college. We want to find out how we did and how we can improve. So bear with us. That data will be forthcoming. It's going to take a little time to get that survey the way that we want to get it. But I do believe that we will be able to obtain some pretty fruitful data to hopefully improve what we do here in the district so that we can serve our students in the future even better than we are now.
Thank you.
Dr. Sinkoviak.
Thank you for that presentation. This was one that I was really looking forward to. As Mr. Weniger said, I really appreciate the fact that you're letting kids explore math in the context of critical thinking and problem solving in real ways. I know certainly the math that I learned at North Allegheny helped me going into college. There was a time, hard to believe, that I was really, really good at partial differential equations and was even able to teach that as part of a chemical engineering process control class. And nothing remains at this point. It's been too many years. But the question that I had is, I was looking at the PISA scores. It's an international test for math and science and reading. And in general, the United States is not doing as well as a lot of other countries. And looking at the trends in the scores across all countries, there appears to be a drop right around the time that you mentioned, which was the mid 2006, 2007. There was a little drop, and of course a precipitous decline in 2019 through 2022, which of course we might have an explanation for that, and hopefully we'll make up some of that ground. But something happened about 20 years ago, and I don't know what that something is, and maybe you have more insight into that. It's not really a question that I'm asking, but just something that I'm posing as we're looking at not just making our kids competitive within the region, competitive within our country, but really competitive internationally, because that's where they're going to be competing after they finish here. So just a comment, what's happening historically, but what's also happening worldwide, and what can we do to help mitigate some of that for our kids. The second request that I have, and again, not a question, I'm not requesting an answer right now, is I think it may be worthwhile to consider what types of outside learning some of our students are doing, especially when it comes to math, and how that may impact the performance of that population of students compared to everybody else. Is it possible that there are certain schools where maybe taking Kumon or Russian math or Singapore math, there's all kinds of different outside courses that kids can take. So I think it might be worth at least asking that question and seeing whether that is impacting student performance, to see whether we can actually incorporate some of those techniques for other students in the school, or maybe even in areas surrounding the school.
One of the things that you bring up is something we're going to take a look at the next year, and it's tasks.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times other countries teach an entire math curriculum through tasks. That's not the way we teach in the United States, but a lot of other countries do. So we are going to take a look. It's not inquiry-based learning. It's a little different.
It is.
But when the kids get a task thrown at them, that they have to know the math and learn the math through the task. So it's something we're going to take a look at. It's part of our, starting in 6th grade, the big ideas learning that we adopted for 6th, 7th, and 8th. There's a separate part of that curriculum that deals with tasks. I also went to 5 conferences at the AIU about tasks during this curriculum review. So it's something I'm going to put out there for the department, take a hard look at.
Yeah.
And if it's something, it's going to start with baby steps, though. I'm not going to try to fool you. Because we were not taught as teachers, because our staff in the math department is getting older. We were not taught this way on how to teach math.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it doesn't mean they can't do it. I'm just saying they have to rethink the way that they teach. It can be done, but it's going to take baby steps. My goal would be that we get one task to start out per 9 weeks. Then we do it 1 per chapter. Then we do 2 per chapter. But it's going to take some time to get there.
And I would actually look at what's happening amongst the different schools as well. If you have, for example, Franklin Elementary did really, really well on their math assessments when we talked about student achievement. Is there something that Franklin students are doing whether
Right.
in class or outside of class? And can we actually extrapolate that and use it in our other schools in a consistent manner? I think the middle schools, parents and community members are very, very sensitive to the idea that some middle schools may not have the achievement that, or students at some middle schools may not have the level of achievement that other students do. And I think that's worth asking that question. Are there commonalities there? Are there things that we can leverage from one school to other schools to maybe improve outcomes for all of our students?
One thing I will tell you is that this upcoming school year, I don't know the exact number, but I think we have 8 half caddy days. Whereas this past school year, I think we had 4. So for whatever reason that is, I don't know the logistics of why that is. But I think when we used to have anywhere from 7 to 9 half caddy days a year, we were able to meet more and get more things accomplished. So that has not been the case for the last year or two, but now moving next year, it's going to be. So we're gonna have some time to dig into these things and take a look at them. Whereas before, I'm not gonna lie to you, we just didn't have the time to dig into them. We just didn't. So that's our plan. So we'll see how it goes. I appreciate everything that you're saying.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If I can also add to that, just as a comment, one of the most foundational impacts on education, at least in our country, that we need to take into consideration, may explain a little bit of the difference in achievement levels across our country and within our states with the rest of the world. In 2001, the federal government passed the Leave No Child Behind Act. And the indirect effect of that, I think, was very positive. It said in our country, every student should succeed, and every student has the right to have access to an education, which put a greater challenge or emphasis in our classrooms that otherwise may not have that same subgroup of students in other countries. So it's not necessarily an apple-to-apple comparison when we have students with already identified special needs or accommodations, whereas in other countries, not only that access may not be there, but so may not be the students. And that is not to make an excuse in any way. I think it's an opportunity for us to examine all the best strategies. Dr. Swager talked about the national representation, the NCTM, the National Council of Teaching Mathematics and Learning 2025, and all those best practices. But I would tell you that our highest level of achievers, I feel, would be just as good of a match as anyone or anywhere in the world. But that still is our challenge. We leave no child behind, just like our mission statement challenges us here at North Allegheny.
That's a fair point, and I'm in full agreement with leaving no child behind.
Ms. Hardy.
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. Thank you all for this deep review of everything math in the district. It's a thrill to have you here with us in the boardroom this evening. I really appreciated the depths that the department went to here and how much information is in your report, including the full results of the SWOT analysis, the interviews with exemplar districts, meeting with the AIU, with the Pennsylvania Department of Education, and looking at our own data. It would seem you left no stone unturned in your search for improvements here. A few areas I was hoping you could expand upon. Thank you for describing in detail spiral reviews. How difficult do you anticipate it will be to implement those across the district K through 12?
We haven't had a problem so far. During the curriculum review, we pulled that 6th grade group, and we pulled a 7th grade group, and we had them create them and start using them. And we're getting very much positive feedback from those teachers that they feel like the students are learning and retaining the information more long term. I know at NAI, Krista can speak on this, I know at NAI that we started to implement it at NAI also. So it's a little bit of a process. Like I said, we've been doing it NASH now for, I don't know, 10, 12 years, but trying to get it all the way down, it just takes time. The place is so big, right? And trying to get all that information out to all of the teachers and then requiring them to make sure that they do it is a difficult task. But I think I've gotten to a point where we've gotten inquiry-based learning taken care of, and now it was time to take a look at spiral learning as a district. And I think I have everybody now buying into the fact that this works. Is it work? Yeah, it's a lot of work because their spiral reviews are never done. If you find out from one year to the next, the students are struggling on a different topic than what the other group had struggled on the year before, you have to adjust your spiral reviews, right? So it's a constant, ongoing mini curriculum, if you want to call it that. So we're getting there. We're better than we were a year ago, I can tell you that.
Excellent. Appreciate your
continue to
efforts
get
there. Would you say, are we making good use of the prolific amounts of data that we have on our students to help meet their needs in math instruction?
Sorry.
Math is unique in how much data we have on
Oh,
all of
yeah.
our students, right? It's incredible how much information you have. Do you think we're doing a good job using that information to meet students' math needs?
I think I'm just gonna tell you my opinion. I think prior to COVID, the answer to that question was yes. We got a little bit lost during COVID and maybe a year after COVID was done. I think we are now diving back into that information and trying to use it moving forward. I will say this, we have more students taking AP math classes than we've ever had before. And our scores on those are higher than they've ever had. So it might appear, like as we go through middle school, like we talked about before, that things aren't quite kosher in middle school right now. We'll work on that to fix it. We appreciate the fact there's a problem and we're taking a look at it. But there's good things happening from sixth grade on. When those teachers are teaching sixth, seventh, and eighth grade math, that material is on the SAT. It's on the ACT. It gets the kids prepared for AP classes. It's a statistical anomaly that we have more kids taking AP math classes and our scores are going up. The more kids you have, the scores should go down. So positive things are happening in lieu of the fact that our middle school PSSA scores aren't maybe where they were at one time. So the answer to your question is this: we are looking at it, and we are going to continue to dig at it as we move forward.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Are we confident that WAGL will have the student buy-in that PATH just didn't have?
Well, no. But if you listen to Sarah, Sarah says they are having. It's part of the adoption that we had at the elementary level. So instead of purchasing something outside of that, because we had to buy it anyway, we're going to take our best look at it. There's a cohesion between WAGL and GOMAT. So bringing in an outside company to make it go with GOMAT, I don't know if that was. There was a lot of things that happened during COVID. There's a lot of stuff going at once. And we were getting funding from the federal government, things of that nature that we had to use, and those people are no longer here. It's a lot. But I do believe in us getting in service a little bit with WAGL. I do believe that WAGL is going to be a better fit than what it's at.
If I may add, Ms. Sardi, I think it's important. There's two things that you'll find when you find success in implementing a program. It's setting expectations, and then you expect and you inspect. And I think somewhere along the line, there may have been a little loss in the inspection part of that to make sure that people are implementing with fidelity. And I think when there's a focus on something in this district, we generally do very, very well. And I think some of that focus has been lost. And I think some of that expectation and then the inspection of the expectation has been lost along the way. And one of the things that what we have to do is I think we have to get our principals more engaged in the instructional learning part of that to make sure that they feel those expectations as well, and work with their classroom teachers to make sure that if the system is not working, if WAGL's not working, let's find a way to make it work. So I think everybody working together as a team should make that work. And if it's not, they'll come back to us and say it's not working, and we'll come back to you and say, hey, look, we need to find another avenue to do that. But before we do that, we have to give it our full effort to make sure that we're actually doing it with fidelity. And I can't say with 100% accuracy that maybe that happened. So
Thank you for that, Dr.
I don't really want to stand up here, but so I was just going to comment that having used ExactPath and trying to use it in correlation with my math class, it didn't line up quite as well. I mean, all the skills are there, but when I wanted students to review just adding fractions with unlike denominators, the only option ExactPath would give me is adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing with fractions. And so it was very hard to regularly implement. I think the learning paths had a lot of value, But when it came from like an actual teacher being able to use the data meaningfully in the classroom, it was much more difficult. But having used Waggle the last 6 weeks, each week we've had a theme of what we're reviewing for, and being able to actually go in, and it's aligned with GoMath. So I can literally look at the new GoMath pacing chart and be like, all right, these are the skills I want to hit, and I open it, and then whoop, there's the drop down, and I can choose the learning activities, the practice activities, the quiz activities. So I think even just its alignment with our GoMath resource is going to be huge for teachers, because I think a lot of us didn't quite get the training that we needed. And I mean, I always try to jump in and utilize as best I can, whether I understand or not. And it ended up turning into, we'll just go work on your learning paths, which I think was very valuable, but we weren't getting quite the data that we needed from it. But fingers crossed for Waggle.
Thank you,
Gary
Mrs.
just
Gross.
mentioned something. Gary just mentioned something. If it's easier for the teachers to do it, the more likelihood that they'll do it. And I think Waggle is going to be easier for the teachers to use.
Excellent. Thank you. I was thrilled to see the plans to do more with math remediation work with the students. The MTSS approach has been so successful with ELA. I'm excited to see what can happen to help students with math as well with that same sort of approach. Thank you so much to the entire math team for this report and the entire department for the work they do with students every day. I wanted to highlight for the board and the community that the district's math PSSA scores were better last year than they were in 2019 pre-pandemic in every grade but one. And that's thanks to all of the work that you have done collectively. I'm really looking forward to things getting even better and better in math. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you, everyone, for your comments. Several of my questions and comments have already been asked. I'm also enthusiastic about the mention in the report about the MTSS for math and win time. I see maybe some hurdles with where we're going to find that time and where we're going to find that staffing, but I'm optimistic that maybe we can make that happen. But I think the only question I'm going to ask is I really appreciated that research you did talking to other exemplar schools. And so if there was one thing from all that research that you took away, like what you would like to implement here, could you share what that might be?
Sure. They have interventionists for math.
Oh, okay. So
That's it.
then I see a lot of heads nodding. Yeah.
I'm not going to say anything else. That's it.
Okay. All right.
That's the main one.
Thank you so much. Thank you for all your work on this. As a math geek, I really love digging into this and I really appreciated it. And I'm excited for all the things to come for our students. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
That is it.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Okay, we will move on now to speakers on voting items. No one has registered ahead, but if anyone in the audience would like to speak for 2 minutes, now is your chance. Seeing none. First, I would like to confirm that Mr. McClure can hear us and that we can hear him. Mr. McClure? He dropped off? Okay. Mrs. Blackburn, are you still able to hear us?
I am.
Excellent. Then we are going to move on to our approval of the minutes. Ms. Hardy.
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. This evening, the board will vote to approve the minutes of the March 20th and March 27th, 2024 meetings, and I so move.
Second.
Any comments on the minutes? Seeing none, we are ready for the vote.
The vote is open. How would you like to vote? I could do it for you. To approve the minutes, aye. The vote is closed and passes 8-0 with Mr. McClure absent for this vote.
Now we will move on to our student activities report. Ms. Modick and Ms. Pagnato.
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. FCCLA prepared for their STAR event projects for the PA State Leadership Conference. 6 students attended the conference in Lancaster, PA. The students did an amazing job with these results. Sydney Rice in 9th grade, fashion construction, made a wedding dress. She placed first in the state with the gold medal and the opportunity to compete at nationals. Colleen Pattison and Juliet Churchill, who were both in grade 11, their topic was focus on children. You can act confidently after school program, and it's ACT for ACT. Placed first in the state with a gold medal and also get to compete at nationals. Hannah Anderson, Sarah Petrovich, and Madison Nigel, their project was Chapter Service Project Portfolio, and they earned a bronze medal. Preparations are underway for the national conference in Seattle, Washington. Additionally, FCCLA plans to bake and donate to Cakes for Care in April. National Honor Society members have continued tutoring at elementary schools and middle schools. Donations were made to the Jared Box Foundation through a collection drive, and members are also volunteering at GCXC races. New member induction occurred for the new junior members recently, and NHS has logged a total of 5,982 and a half hours. Thanks.
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. Not much has changed since our last meeting. Class Council is currently working on activities for our This Is Us event later in May. NAI Key Club held elections for the upcoming school year officers. Key Clubbers continue to log service hours in and out of the community. Their current running total is 3,394 hours. And then HOSA has been planning a few meetings after their state leadership conference and are excited to be joined with another guest speaker at the end of April. And they're hosting a field trip.
Thank you, Ms. Pagnato and Ms. Modick. Because our work session went so smoothly last week, we have a consent agenda planned for this evening. May I have a motion for the consent agenda?
So moved.
May I have a second?
I'll second.
Are there any comments on the consent agenda?
I actually have a couple.
Ms. Britton Dozier.
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. I'll make this quick. Since last week, when we reviewed the voting items in the HR folder, there have been some additions that I'd like to highlight. In the resignation and retirements item, there have been 2 resignations added. The resignation of Robert Hetzel, Assistant Director of Facilities, and Jacqueline DeFelice, Administrative Assistant to the Director of Student Services. We thank both of them for their work and efforts on behalf of the district and wish them well. Also this week, the district held its annual retirement luncheon. In total, there were 1,239 years of service represented at the luncheon, and there is a picture of the luncheon on our website as soon as you reach the landing page. And there are additional hires for the board's approval this evening that Dr. Hyland will provide details on, or Mrs. Warner.
Yes. Any other comments? Dr. Gibbs.
Yes, thank you. Since last week, there is a settlement agreement that has been put in place between the district and a family and a student. And that agreement involved the establishment of a compensatory education fund in the amount of $9,000 for the family to use for educational purposes for their student.
Thank you, Dr. Gibbs. Anything else on the consent agenda before I take my turn? In addition to what Ms. Britton Dozier noted, there were 4 professional employees added to the HR report, a couple honoraria, a supplemental position, and excitingly, a new Carson Middle School assistant principal and a new supervisor of special education. And before I make more comments on those, why don't we have our vote?
The vote is open. Mrs. Warner, Mr. McClure appears to be back online.
Mr. McClure, have you been able to hear the discussion on the consent agenda? And we need to make sure we can hear you also. Unfortunately, Mr.
Hello,
McClure, you're
can
not
you hear me?
able to. Oh,
Can you hear me?
yes,
They
we
turned my
can
mic
hear you.
off.
Were you able to hear our
You can hear
discussion?
me. I vote aye, except with the recusal that I mentioned earlier.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. McClure. And Mrs. Blackburn, you've been able to hear our discussion?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you.
The vote is closed and it passes unanimously. If I could, we need to go back one step before you proceed. We have not voted on the minutes.
My apologies. Let's vote on the. Didn't we vote on the minutes? We did vote on the minutes. We only voted on the
We
minutes.
did that. You read all of that? Okay. I missed it. My
Yes.
apologies.
Okay. I think we're good.
Now we have some new people.
So now I would like to welcome these people who have so patiently waited in the audience. We have our new NAI band director and marching band director here this evening, Mr. Bob Matchett. And the next two have some more complicated last names, but I'm hoping I get it right. I'm excited to welcome Ms. Janelle Biagarelli to Carson Middle School as an assistant principal, and Carrie Frohnapple as our new supervisor for special education. Thank you all for being here. Would any of you like to say a few words at the microphone? No.
I would just like to thank everyone here throughout my interview process, the board, of course, the superintendents, and everyone in attendance. Dr. Ewing, for having faith in me. I'm very excited for this journey here at North Allegheny, and I'm very grateful. So thank you so much. I'm very excited.
Thank you.
I'd like to see ditto. I feel very similar. I honestly, as the new NAI band director and marching band director, I'm looking forward to really making our community proud. I really am. So thank you very much.
I would add all the same, and you don't have an opportunity in a school district such as North Allegheny to start a brand new position that's never been held before. So I'm very honored to do that. I'm excited to get to this work and excited to integrate with all of these wonderful things that I heard about math and interventions and MTSS today. So thank you so much for the opportunity. It has been an honor to interview and speak with all of you over the course of the last few weeks.
Thank you all, and welcome to North Allegheny. Now we will move on to special reports by the board. Legal counsel, I believe you provided us with a report electronically.
I did. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Citizens Advisory Committee and North Allegheny Foundation, Dr. Simkowiak.
The Citizens Advisory Committee held its final meeting of the academic year this past Monday. The North Allegheny Foundation is going to be holding the Taste of NA event in May, and I hope everybody is able to attend a fabulous event.
Thank you, Dr. Simkowiak. Mrs. Blackburn, would you like to provide your reports for the A.W. Beatty and the legislative report?
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. The A.W. Beatty Career Center, we have some March and April Students of the Month. In advertising design, congratulations to Jane Henkel. Carpentry Building Construction, Darren Ross. Bryce DeMarco. Culinary Arts, Jordan Fisher. HVAC, Barry Shell. Networking and Cybersecurity, Jacob Mignella. Pastry Arts, Emmeline Opre. Surgical Sciences, Andrew Mitterner. And Veterinary Sciences, Samuel Wright. So congratulations to those students. For Hall of Fame, we have picked the date of October 17th. So I hope to see everyone at the banquet and congratulate all of the winners for the Hall of Fame. And legislative, Governor Shapiro has stated that all of the schools in Pennsylvania will be doing their PSSAs online in another year. We already do ours online, so we're in great shape here at North Allegheny. That concludes my reports. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Blackburn. While we have you, did you need to abstain from anything in the human resources folder? No? Okay. I just wanted to double check that. Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Weidman. That concludes our special reports. Is there anyone who would like to speak on a non-voting item this evening? No one called ahead, and I do not see anyone in the audience. So now we can move on to our closing items. Does anyone have any announcements or reminders? I do not either. And so now we may adjourn this meeting.